dire la relation de la société et les personnes qui veulent s'exprimer une religion personnelle. Je m'appelle Roberta Ann Kapelovich et je voudrais remercier le Shul Manuel Beit Sholom, la Beit Knesset de Manuel Beit Sholom, de leur hospitalité aujourd'hui. Et je me rappelle très bien d'avoir fêté la fête de Shavuot avec vous il y a 2 ans. Je me sens très triste qu'une discussion d'une charte des valeurs de la société québécoise devienne un code vestimentaire pour la fonction publique du Québec. J'espère que toute charte des valeurs du Québec devienne une réflexion sur d'autres questions aussi, telles que la relation entre le gouvernement, l'État et la société en plusieurs domaines, et qui charte cette relation pour le 21e siècle et au-delà. Et toute loi qui exprime une série de limites ou règlements sur le code vestimentaire de la fonction publique québécoise nécessairement repose sur un équilibre entre le droit des personnes de s'habiller de manière qui me permette l'expression de leur identité personnelle, incluant une identité religieuse, sans imposer cette identité sur d'autres personnes. Il me semble que cet équilibre est faisable et ne doit pas étaler et dominer toute discussion d'une charte des valeurs du Québec. Il faut aussi poser la question pourquoi on discute uniquement les symboles d'identité religieuse et non pas d'autres symboles d'identité personnelle. Et dernièrement, c'est la chose qui me semble dernière, il faut aussi distinguer entre les symboles d'une religion et l'événement qui permet à l'individu d'incarner l'acte de leur foi. Ça veut dire on dit que tout est un symbole de la religion. Ce n'est pas juste un symbole, les vêtements sont aussi très souvent they're enactments of religion rather than symbols, and there's a difference. La dernière chose que je veux aussi souligner, un point de vue qui vient d'être exprimé, c'est que cette discussion aussi semble exprimer un soutien de l'uniformisation de la société à la nivellement de la diversité qui doit aussi être considérée comme très dangereuse. Ce sont des questions, des commentaires qui peuvent susciter d'autres questions et commentaires. Merci. Merci.
I just wanted to make a comment and a question. I think sometimes when there's a lot of things that are concerning the public and we can all get together like this, it can be a magical time and a time of positivity and hope and change. And I think this discussion is really amazing. I'm just an interested party. I represent no one here, so I think I'm privileged to be sitting amongst you, and I think the content here is wonderful. Now my question is this, for either the religious leaders or just the panel in general. Is anybody educating their communities on voting and making sure their opinion is known, not necessarily in this municipal election, but in the next election, how imperative it would be for your voice to be heard, especially if you're moved in such a manner? 45% of Quebecers voted in the last election, and 40%, less than 40 in Montreal itself. Are we going to do something in particular? Do we have a plan of action to make sure people get to vote? Maybe people that really want to vote that can't get there, to help get the word out, the message received, so we do not have the small consensus, or that we have the broad consensus and we have the true majority of Quebecers being represented and spoken for. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to notice the 4 more, so hold on to your questions, keep them brief, but before I turn to you, I'm going to turn back to our panel. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Comments? Maybe a couple of comments on any of those?
So I think the first question was just really asking about what steps are we going to take to move forward as a society. And I think this is a great start. Us coming together here, representatives of different religions in Quebec. We have a dialogue going on about what our religion brings to Quebec and how we'll be affected by this. So I think this is a great we definitely need more of this going forward. And just a second, there was a comment about differentiating between religious symbols and personal symbols, and I thought that was a great comment, that how we're beginning to distinguish between the two. As a Sikh, clearly I'm a Sikh, I wear a turban, but I don't think that's the only distinguishing factor of my identity. If you take my turban off, I still have a flowing beard. My name is still Mukbir Singh. I think if your name is Mr. Goldblum, we know what faith you're from. So I think it's, and when you really start to analyze these type of arguments are being made that, oh, we want a neutral identity, it doesn't exist. We all have different beliefs. We all have different ideas and philosophies. And for us to begin neutralizing this is a step in the wrong direction. So I thought that's a great comment. So thank you.
In response to your question, first of all, you're right. I think while there is and I thank you, Mr. Weinstock, for your comment about the need to call a spade and talk about Islamophobia, because I know from a lot of the experiences that I've had in panels such as these, or attending myself, there's a real resistance to the term Islamophobia, a really profound resistance in many various sectors. So just using that term, I think, is important. But you're right, the fact that you would have to take off your kippah in practice to be a lawyer or a judge is definitely very problematic, and just as important as a woman having to take off her hijab or a Sikh having to take off his turban, etc. And I wanted to also take the opportunity to add to Father Walsh's comment about, or the perspective that you brought to the table. And I find it, not enough is said about this, the fact that we've reduced to Pathing 1, this notion of Pathing 1, the Catholic religious practice. So if you've been practicing Catholic your whole life, all of a sudden we're telling you that it's just folklore. And that's also very problematic, but we don't talk about that as much, but I think it really does deserve to be mentioned. In terms of concrete steps, I'm part of a group of women who've been involved in interfaith dialogue, specifically with Christian women of various denominations for the last 2 years. And so at our last discussion, we decided that maybe we should try and put something out publicly about the charter. And in response to your question about mobilizing around votes, there are many groups that are active within the Muslim community who try and raise awareness among their brothers and sisters about the importance of going out to vote. But as you said, the number of people who vote in general in society is quite low, and so when you've got maybe a more recent community in terms of the numbers today, it is an education that still needs to be. It is an uphill battle. But I can confirm that the tone of the public debate right now is certainly, I think, if one of the things we're not talking enough about is one of the I think on the longer term, one of the impacts of this whole discussion, whether or not it passes, whether or not the charter passes, I think a lot of the damage is being done. And it's really hard to convince people to get involved and feel like they're an integral part of the society when everybody and everyone is telling them that they don't belong, that they don't fit, and that the only way they will be acceptable or accepted is if they basically erase everything about themselves and assimilate into the version of what being is. So that's definitely a challenge for those of us who are working within the community to try and get people to be more engaged and to be more civic-minded, because some of the responses we get are, well, what's the point? You know, if I go out there and I try and mobilize, and I know this from personal experience, when you do try and engage in the institutions, and this has happened to me within the feminist movement, I'm accused of being an infiltrator. And I'm not the only one. Right? We're accused of being infiltrators, we're accused of trying to Islamicize the institutions, we're accused of pushing an Islamist pro-hijab agenda. Some of you may have seen the video that's circulating on Facebook about this, that targets a number of Muslim women, including myself, as being, tremendous sources of evil. And you pay a personal price. You the first time I've spoken about this publicly. It wasn't my plan, but the discussion kind of led me there. I mean, this is very serious. This is very, very serious. So, if anything, the tone of the discussion is discouraging people from coming out. People are worried that they won't be able to find work. People are worried that, nowadays when you go for a job interview, the employer Googles you. If the thing that comes up is an article slandering you, calling you an Islamist, and, calling you Osama bin Laden's cousin, well, chances are you're not going to get that job. And if you've only been here a few years and you're trying to feed a family, that's probably going to be your priority over engaging and trying to, bridge the gap to communities, etc., etc., etc. So.
Just to perhaps add a word, I think there's a lot going on to your question, but what do we plan to do? Victor and I sit on the board of the Canadian Centre for Ecumenism and Interfaith Dialogue, and we have all that's going on there that I wouldn't have time to tell you about. There's a lot going on in all of our communities trying to make people aware of the Charter, make them aware of what the difficulties are, make them aware of what we've got to do. But I always come back to the idea that the country was built by little villages, and for the little village it became a little town. The town became a city. The city became a province. It became a country. If we're really going to have good dialogue, good religious dialogue, good human dialogue, knock at your neighbor's door. That's where it's going to begin, and that's where it's going to happen. Somebody that you know who wears a kippah. You're a Christian. Knock at their door and say, what does it mean to you to be a Jew in this present time in Quebec? If you've got, when I was at Quebec, fortunately, we had the large Sikh temple on Corton. They invited our community to join them. So I simply said to the community, anybody wants to join us 3 Sundays from now, after our service, we're welcome at the temple. I expected 30 or 40 people. 250 people signed up. And we went to the temple, and we were fed, and we were welcomed, and we learned about the Sikh tradition. It's in your neighborhood. It's there. If it doesn't start there, then it's again top down. And then you have to just obey what I say. Please don't do that.
I want to in particular thank Lila for being part of this roundtable, because I think that once we put on the table how much Islamophobia is part of this conversation, that also makes clear, and you've made clear, how much more of a personal risk it is for you to be here than for the rest of us to be here. So I want to say that out loud. I think that anytime one plans an event such as this, one draws upon existing relationships, and one also makes new relationships. And so, for instance, we're very happy to be able to call upon Father Walsh, with whom we have, and Victor especially has this long and enduring relationship. And to be honest, we had to scramble more than I would have wanted to scramble to find a Muslim to sit on this panel. And to me, that was a reflection of a deeper issue in terms of the lack of conversation and the lack of connections, despite efforts that I know have been made between the Jewish and the Muslim community. So part of what comes from this is Lila, you're going to get an email from me later today saying, can we make that Christian-Muslim women's dialogue maybe a trialogue and open that conversation? And the other thing I want to say, 2 things very briefly. One is that for those who are interested in helping keep this conversation going, you found your way here today. I'm sure you can find my email, though Greshko is tough to spell. So reach out about that, and I'm happy to help us be a clearinghouse for others for that, and also for issues in terms of getting the word out to both, because I think it's so important that we take this as an opportunity not to be divided, but to come together and to make some change beyond a conversation, you're absolutely right, into the world tomorrow and tomorrow.